All right, so lots of criticism on the last two videos, particularly the last one, the response to D'Angelo Wallace, both of his responses to that vegan teacher. So I'm going to go over some of the most common criticisms. What kills me about this video is that one, you're pretty much blaming your audience for not giving you research material when this is your video, and two, you were given several examples of how that vegan teacher is problematic and harmful. She told a TikToker with CP that veganism could heal him, for crying out loud. Yeah, that's awful. I didn't see that, which is why I asked for examples. I mean, I wasn't, blaming? I wasn't blaming. I mean, I was kind of laughing. Like when someone asks for source material and not YouTuber responses, and then all I get back is YouTuber responses. Like it's kind of funny. It's like that's specifically not what I asked for. And then if there was any relevant, like good comments, they're harder to see because they're drowned out by like, watch this iNabber video, watch D'Angelo Wallace. People wanted me to make a more critical video of her stuff. You know, I'm not just going to trust hearsay. I'm not just going to trust these YouTubers that don't link to any of their stuff. I asked for original videos, and instead I got like poorly made drama videos that misrepresented her. So yeah, I was kind of poking fun at you guys for that. And like I said, I get people not having links because it's TikTok and it's impossible to search. It's like really hard to find stuff unless someone else has already linked to it. So again, I was understanding it was more just like, okay, if you don't, to me, it's like when someone shares a recipe and then there's reviews and all the reviews are like, I loved it, but I changed this and this and this, or I didn't like it and I changed this and this and this. It's like, well, then you didn't make the recipe, so like don't review it. Or, oh, this looks delicious, and they give it a 5 or whatever. Like, what? Have you seen that on Amazon where someone asks a question and they're like, I don't know. Like, why even answer? That's kind of my feelings on that. Why even leave a response if that's not... Yeah, I thought people wanted me to talk about specific things, so I was giving people a chance to share those specific things with me so I didn't miss things. You know, I'm not trying to have people do my work for me. You guys know, I've talked about it before, I spend hours and hours and hours on my videos, so, you know, I'm not trying to leech off you guys or anything. I just want to answer the things that you want me to answer. So, yeah, I'm still doing part 3, which I guess will be part 4 now. I guess that's still coming. So again, if you guys have like very like specific things that you can link to, please do that. I guess the best place, I will make a post on YouTube. If you go to my channel, there will be like a community tab, I think. Go to the latest post and leave a comment there. Don't respond to anyone else's comment. Just leave, you know, an original comment. You know what I'm saying? I will say that it's interesting watching you defend that vegan teacher because she's exactly the kind of vegan that you spent a lot of time criticizing a few years ago on this channel. When you said you wouldn't definitely say someone is bad for veganism because of their activism, then I would implore you to take down many of your previous videos where you make that exact argument that people are bad for veganism. So the only times I've explicitly stating, the only times I can remember, if I'm wrong, please let me know. The only times I've explicitly stated that someone was bad for veganism was like Freely and her ilk, people promoting dangerous, horrible vegan diets to people. That is dangerous to people. That's bad for vegans, bad for veganism. So just like this example that this person gives, this video that they're referring to where that vegan couple tells people that they won't need their medication anymore if they eat low-fat, high-carb vegan. Before we criticize people like Sarah for talking about their struggles and for making veganism look bad, maybe we should look inward. Promoting inaccurate information, promoting a very simplistic view of veganism that, you know, a vegan diet will cure everything and fix all of your problems. That's bad for veganism. Or this one, where they smiled and laughed throughout a video about a child dying.
Judge convicts parents after baby dies from vegan diet. Now, when was the last time we read a headline that said, Judge convicts parents after baby dies from omnivorous diet?
But more to the point of this comment, there's a difference in criticizing the substance of what someone says and criticizing the delivery, how they say something. Criticizing the substance of what someone is saying when it's wrong, this is very objective, right? This applies to, again, all the diet stuff, the high carb, low fat stuff, the extreme claims, non-vegans don't deserve to live. Remember that? Criticizing how somebody is saying something, such as being rude or insensitive or cringy, whatever, that's different. I'm not saying you can't criticize that. Obviously, I have in the past, but it's much harder to say with assurance that how the person is delivering their message is overall bad. I don't know if that vegan teacher's delivery is ultimately making more vegans or pushing more people away, so I'm not going to make that claim. I might touch on her delivery a little bit in the third video, but it's mostly going to be focused on, again, the substance. You don't go to prison for being a vegan in 20-some countries. I never said vegans did. I never equated vegan phobia with homophobia. That vegan teacher didn't either, to my knowledge. I don't know why people are so obsessed with equating. Nobody equated anything. I think it's safe to say that homophobia does a lot more direct harm to human people in the world, even today. I mean, it's hard not to when you're comparing something like 10% or more of the population to barely over 1%. And this is particularly true when you account for less developed countries. The people being forced to live in the closet for fear for their lives probably outnumber those ethical vegans being forced to eat meat or starved, mostly in institutional settings or by parents or grandparents, or tricked into eating meat by bullies who put meat in their food for fun. I never made any relative assessment of harm. People just can't help but hear that, I guess. I never equated the two in the video. My only point was that minimizing vegan phobia, minimizing the scope of it, the nature of it, or trying to diminish or erase its existence is only feeding into the bigotry of vegan phobia. I mean, if you don't like bigotry, whatever, call it whatever you want. It's bad, right? It's bad to bully people, vegan or gay or whatever. And to see even some vegans in the comments playing into that sucks. The vegan discrimination I face, aka jokes, not being able to eat at some restaurants, and the occasional person ridiculing me is basically to the extent of mild microaggressions. A black man says, "I've never experienced any racism, so yeah, it's not a problem anymore." I think the response to that is pretty obvious, right? And no, I am not equating racism with vegan phobia. I'm simply making the comparison to show how ridiculous it is to examine or to make a claim about the nature of something based on just your own personal experience. Look, I'm privileged enough to have gone vegan as an adult. I never had to deal with having to rely on my parents to feed me, having to ask my parents if I can be vegan. And even if I had, I'm sure my family would have accommodated me. My family has always been supportive. I've never dealt with, my family joking or being mean. None of that shit. I've never been institutionalized or starved. I've never been bullied. I've never had friends who tricked me into eating meat, but that's just my experience. It doesn't mean that all of that and more hasn't happened to other vegans. Each type of bigotry has similarities and differences from other types of bigotry. Some are more severe than others in a global perspective, and on an individual perspective, every person experiences them differently. I'm sure there are vegans who have had a harder time with veganism than some gay people have had with being gay. I mean, that's just life, right? There are some people who've been very fortunate. They've grown up in a supportive family with a supportive network of friends. They haven't really experienced a lot, if any, homophobia. And yet there are vegans like this person, this awful, heart-wrenching comment. That's brutal. That's terrible. So yeah, the next time you try to diminish something, please remember that maybe there are people like this who are reading that. And maybe, I don't know, that feels kind of bad. And then remember that there are gay people doing the same thing, trying to minimize homophobia, because for them, it hasn't been an issue. There are Black people, Asian people, every single type of person doing the exact same thing, trying to minimize a particular form of bigotry, because for them, it hasn't been an issue. Maybe everyone should stop doing that. Wow, I cannot believe you just defended her equating racism, sexism, and homophobia to vegan phobia. Oh, no, no, no. Veganism does not equal being gay. Oof. Lots of comments like this. I'm sure you can tell where this is going. I never, ever, ever equated the two. I literally said comparing is not equating. Comparing is not equating. Racists and speciesists commonly engage in the same kinds of bad arguments to devalue others. It makes sense to compare the two. And that vegan teacher didn't either, at least in all the clips, all the stuff that I was responding to and D'Angelo Wallace was responding to. Nobody equated them. You're seeing what you want to see, or hearing what you want to hear. Or you didn't watch the video. I've seen the watch time on this 30+ minute long video. Yeah, a lot of you guys are just listening to others and reading comments. Maybe don't do that. Being vegan is a choice. It's way different than racism, homophobia, etc. So my comment on choice was specifically responding to D'Angelo. Vegan phobia is not like other bigotries because it involves choice. You choose to be vegan. Implying that something being a choice makes that bigotry okay, or at least like more palatable. I'm not interested in trying to categorize bigotries based on like how bad they are relative to one another. I don't think that's useful. But I can tell you that choice has nothing to do with how bad a form of bigotry is. And I can tell you that you don't know what choice means. Didn't you state that sex was a need in your video about cheaters? You even said that denying men sex causes them suffering. Very interesting that you are now defending / excusing / deflecting from that vegan teacher's claim about gay relationships being a choice. So I don't think that vegan teacher claimed that. Again, I was responding to D'Angelo's claim about veganism being a choice and therefore different from homophobia. My point with cheating had nothing to do with choice. I mean, people can choose to suffer a lack of sex, right? They can choose to stay in that relationship. That doesn't make it any less horrible, any less cruel. How this is often seen as okay, particularly when it's involving men, that you just kind of have to suck it up when, when women age and almost inevitably lose our sex drives. Well, and it's like not acceptable to then go out and have like a side piece. And I think most women, if you ask your wife if you can do that, they're going to say no. And that maybe we should start seeing that as cruel. Obviously, that man or that woman choosing to then cheat is making the wrong choice. But I think that maybe we can be a little bit more understanding of how tough a situation that can be when someone has been in a relationship for years, they have a life with someone, they love that person, that we can be a little bit more understanding when they do make the mistake and they cheat, and being sympathetic instead of just condemning them. But yeah, nothing to do with choice. So I don't really understand that. But going back to homophobia, it's cruel, it's unjust to force gay people not to have relationships. Right? Sexual or emotional, whatever. Nothing about it being a choice makes it any less cruel. In the strictest sense, if you accept scientific determinism, deny that, free will exists, then nothing is really a choice because that kind of non-deterministic free will is an illusion. But of course, that's not how we live our lives. There are heuristics by which we can assess what is and isn't a choice. For practicality, it's really hard to live life if we act as though we don't have free will. Imagine a bad guy. My kids are all about bad guys right now and getting the bad guys and the witches. I don't know why witches, but anyway, imagine a bad guy kidnaps 100 people and tells them that they have to change something about themselves or he's going to kill them. How many of them change and how many of them die? If 0 of them change, it's probably not a choice, right? Like asking them to change how tall they are, that's not a choice unless you're some sort of elaborate medical procedure, I guess. You know what I'm talking about though. Asking them to change their genetic makeup, no, not a choice. Asking them to stop loving somebody, asking them to stop being attracted to somebody, asking them to stop having empathy for animals, none of these are choices. Now, if some people change, if even one person changes, then at least to some degree, that thing is a choice. Telling people to stop having sex or die, yeah, a lot of people aren't going to be able or willing to stop doing that, and rightly so, but some will ultimately stop doing it and just deal with the emotional and physical suffering it causes them. That makes it a choice. It's a choice that's wrong, obviously, to force on somebody, but it's still a choice. Telling ethical vegans they have to eat meat, they'll still feel for the animals, and some may not ever physically choke down meat or just be unwilling to harm animals to save their own lives and die martyrs. But some will ultimately stop doing it, enduring the suffering it causes them and trying to come to terms with it. That makes it a choice. Again, still wrong. Something being a choice doesn't mean that it's something you're indifferent to, something that you can just take or leave on a whim. Some choices are trivial like that, but a lot of them very much are not. A lot of the choices we make speak to our core, just who we are. Just to be clear, I don't blame anybody who starts eating meat again at the threat of violence, die or eat meat again, just in case I would then be misrepresented for that. That's not what I'm saying. It was just a little thought experiment. I'm sure I would eat meat to save my own ass. So speaking of homophobia, not all homophobia is equal. There are some forms of it that do fixate on the sexual orientation itself, regardless of whether or not the person acts on it, whether or not the person has gay relationships. Likewise, not all vegan phobia is equal. There are people who will hate you for just not wanting to eat meat, even if you are forced to do so. There are people who will hate you simply for caring about animals and thinking animals have moral value, that animal agriculture should be ended regardless of what you eat. My point ultimately is, to say that no homophobia involves bigotry against choice, obviously untrue. I mean, do y'all want to give these anti-gay churches a pass and say they aren't homophobic anymore because they're no longer focusing on the orientation itself and only on the choice of having a relationship? These people are absolutely still homophobic. Bigotry against something that is technically a choice doesn't nullify the significance or the harm of that bigotry. And finally, racism. Cool. There was a lot of this racist shit in the comment section. Not at all helped by comments like D'Angelo's, which did everything but echo them. So in the video, I said, have you experienced vegan phobia? If not, does that disqualify you from talking about it? Because if it does, what is the point of this? I never said that not experiencing racism disqualifies you from speaking about it, though. It disqualifies you from speaking over those who do, which happens not just overtly, but by things like entering the conversation and comparing it to your own problems that have nothing to do with your race, etc., especially when nobody discriminates against you based on your race or sexuality or gender, etc., in the first place. First, how is he not speaking over people who've experienced vegan phobia?
Clearly you have never experienced racism. If your first thought is, hey, this is just like racism. Being vegan is definitely a choice. It's definitely not on the same level as other forms of bigotry.
He's diminishing it even though he's never experienced it. He's doing exactly what he's telling other people not to do regarding race, sexuality, etc. But beyond that, he's basically saying that it's wrong for me to talk about racism on my own platform to my audience unless I'm parroting people of color. If I'm saying something different, then I am talking over people, even though it's my videos, again, on my own platform. And not just any people of color, let's be real. I'm sure it wouldn't count if I was quoting Glenn Lowry or John McWhorter, people who are critical of these sorts of views and who happen to be Black. Am I still talking over people of color then? Is it okay if I make the exact same points but just from another Black person? Is it then okay? This extremist view, and it is 100% an extremist view, that people who don't have direct personal experience with something cannot talk about that thing. It's not something I agree with at all. I'm not going to pretend that I agree with it to, appease you guys, no matter how many times you call me racist or whatever. That's not who I am. I'm not gonna lie. My degree is in philosophy, and I can tell you that you don't have to have experience with something to understand a definition. I think anyone can tell you that, but I don't know, maybe me being an expert will lend some weight to what I said. Expert. Using that very loosely. And to the contrary, experience can often create problems. It can create emotional barriers. When we're biased towards something, it can be really hard to be objective about it, especially if it's a sore spot. Racism is not a qualia, which is kind of like saying it's subjective or something unique as an experience. And D'Angelo knows this. He's tweeted the definition of racism before. Racism is related to an objective set of empirical circumstances, like beliefs that people hold, actions they engage in, so treating people differently based on perceived race, and the systemic form. Short of mind reading, those are all objective and verifiable facts. But personal feelings and offense are subjective. They are not objective. Your feeling, your insistence that something is racist because something related to a discussion on race offended you doesn't mean it's actually racist, doesn't mean the person who said it is racist. What makes something racist is objective facts about the thing that fit in with the definition of racism. If you disagree, if you think my whiteness has any bearing on my ability to understand a definition, then you are by definition racist. I'm not trying to be inflammatory, but that's what you're doing. The last thing I'll say, basically that all of this talk of vegan phobia is kind of a distraction. It's a distraction from the main issue, which is non-human animal suffering. It's the main thing vegans care about, the suffering animals endure due to speciesism. And by comparison, I mean, vegan phobia is virtually nothing next to speciesism. There are over 20 billion animals suffering in captivity at any given time. I don't know about you, but that is a number it's impossible to comprehend. And the treatment of these animals, regardless of whether you feel that they as individuals have less moral value than people, the treatment of these animals is worse than any human group today, outside of like literal torture of prisoners of war. And it's all legal. Tiny cages, often too small to turn around in, branding, debeaking, having teeth cut off without anesthetic, even having their genitals removed by being literally strangled with like rubber bands until they die and rot off for lack of circulation, being electrocuted or killed screaming and writhing in pain in gas chambers, or worse, cooked alive and suffocated slowly with ventilation shut down, getting a clumsily administered bolt to the head that may or may not kill you quickly is actually the best option. On an individual level, of course, a human being is more important than a non-human animal. Of course, you save the human in the burning building scenario. But on a systemic level, if you're going to brush off that level of cruelty to billions of living, feeling, sentient beings because they are less intelligent than you are and have less value than we do individually, I don't see how you could say you advocate for justice. You advocate for things that benefit you. Not to equate, but if we're going to consider all of our racist ancestors evil, have you stopped and thought about what your descendants are going to say about you? Just to be clear, I don't think you're evil. I think you are average. I made a video, called something like, "Are we all moral monsters?" We all are. Every single one of us. It might be animals for you. Who knows what it is for me? I'm sure there's something I'm doing that in the future is going to be deemed absolutely horrific. So be a little bit humble. Maybe stop deeming all of the people who disagree with you as bigots, because your descendants, I promise you, are going to be looking back less than fondly at you. So again, I just wanted to be clear that my discussion of vegan phobia was really just because, they brought it up, explaining why responses like D'Angelo's are just so profoundly wrong. And I do think it's something that should be talked about. Obviously, we should be trying to help fellow vegans who are dealing with this kind of shit get through it and provide support for them in any way that we can. But again, the most important issue here is speciesism. And I don't think that appealing to vegan phobia as opposed to speciesism is like an effective debate strategy. I don't think so at all. I think this is what ends up happening. People cannot hear anything except for you're equating vegan phobia to homophobia or whatever, even if you don't. And you're just saying, I didn't say that over and over again. And that's the conversation. It's literally like you're trying to lose your following. Yeah, that's one theory, that I'm just kind of tired of the channel, or I'm just bored. I'm just trying to be provocative. I don't know. It's interesting how often people assume that whenever someone says something that they don't agree with, or a lot of people don't agree with. I don't know. I mean, it does. If I did want to end the channel, that does sound kind of funny. Maybe that's something I would do. I don't know. I don't think I would do that. That would be really disrespectful to people who actually like me and like the channel, But yeah, that's not something I would do. Look, I just make the content I want to make. And if it's something that's going to be controversial, very rarely does that lead me to not talk about it. I mean, this is nothing new. I've been doing this virtually since the inception of my channel. A lot of you here are pretty new, so maybe you're not familiar with that. But yeah, I mean, those who have been here since the early days, y'all remember the video I did, the like, you don't have to go vegan to be healthy? Y'all remember that? I lost like 100 subscribers or something, which at the time that was a huge deal, and I was absolutely floored. Like, I didn't think, it was crazy. I remember, oh my gosh, there were like a couple people who always left comments because, again, the channel was so small. So I would always, you could still read the comments, right? So I was familiar with the people who were always leaving comments, and a couple of them, oh my God, they sent me these long messages. They were so angry with me and they unsubscribed. And yeah, so I've been doing that since day one, baby. Again, I make the videos I want to make, specifically regarding that vegan teacher. I said on Patreon, the criticism she was getting made me want to respond, especially given how many people seem to assume that I would be in agreement with people like iNabber and D'Angelo. That just really made me kind of think like, I don't know, maybe people don't know my views like at all. And yeah, her being called a bigot over and over and over again just made me really uncomfortable. And I did not want to be associated with that, even if it was just some people assuming that I would agree. But also, like, I genuinely don't want a bunch of dogmatic bullies following me. I don't know. If you're not going to be civil, if you're not going to be open-minded, if you're not going to be charitable, if your first instinct is just to lash out and seemingly it's like thrilling, like it's exciting to be outraged. Oh man, I don't want that shit here. Leave that on Twitter. I'm hoping that most of the people who unsubscribed were just like misled by all of the misrepresentation of my views by others, right? Again, average watch time, it is clear that virtually nobody actually watched the video. Just went to the comment section, I guess, and accepted what they saw there. It's disappointing. I mean, look, I don't expect a lot from like YouTube comment sections, but I don't know. I thought mine would be a little bit better, but yeah, it's disappointing. Just a combination of lazy and, again, enjoying being outraged and being part of this like group of people saying, no, you're wrong and you're bad. Whenever a lot of people misrepresent you, I think it is a good idea to go, okay, I must not have been clear. Like at least as a first step, like, what did I do wrong? What did I say wrong, or what, something like that. I didn't get my message across well. But when I literally say comparing is not equating, like, I don't know how else to do it without, okay, guys, and I'm not gonna fucking do that because a lot of you here don't need that. And I don't want to do that. That's not enjoyable to me, to talk to you like you're babies. This wasn't a me issue. Clearly was not a me issue. Again, it's that I talk a lot about just people not being charitable and just assuming the worst and seemingly wanting to assume the worst and enjoying assuming the worst. Fuck, that is nasty, man. Like, that's nasty. Really try to be honest with yourself if that's what's going on, because a lot of people do it. I sometimes I get outraged and I enjoy it. I used to have this friend and we would joke about being like united in hate because we both like hated this particular tennis player, and we joked about it, but it was kind of nice to be like, oh, you hate him too? Hell yeah. Because our favorite tennis players were different, but we both hated this one dude, and it was like a joke, but yeah, it was kind of like, yeah. And man, that's a bad relic from our hunter-gatherer past, right? It was really important for survival when we were living in like small little bands, right? But now it's pretty shit, and I think it leads us to act like pretty shit people. So especially with the internet, when you're not seeing someone face to face. And I don't know, man. All I can say is I'm trying to do good. I'm not trying to be a bad person. If we disagree, maybe we just disagree. Maybe it's nothing more than that. Maybe it doesn't have to be that I'm this bad person deep down inside or something. Maybe we just disagree. But thank you to those of you who were civil, those of you who actually watched through the video. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe, patreon.com/unnaturalvegan. It's like 10 o'clock. I'm gonna go play Pikmin for a little bit and then go to bed. So thanks again for watching, and I will have a new video hopefully very soon. Oh yeah, then the final part of this, and then we're done with it. Hopefully later this week. I don't know yet. We'll see. Do y'all watch Sabrina? Does anyone here? I'm sure some of you watch Sabrina. What's it called? Not Teenage Witch. Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Teenage Witch? Whatever. Yeah, partner started watching it early on, and I just immediately disliked her character. I don't know what it is. But then I kind of got into it. It's like The Magicians, although I still like genuinely like The Magicians. We're working on the final season now. But anyway, yeah, so I kind of got into it, and like it was pretty good. It had some fun stuff. I thought not this final season, but the season 3, 4, whatever. I thought it ended pretty fun. Oh my God, this final season is just awful. It is just, wow, I cannot believe it. Spoilers, kind of, but like Eldritch Terrors, number 1, fucking dated. Like when that like popped up and got real big, like what, a few years ago? Aren't we over that now? What? Why are you doing that now? And number 2, the whole scary thing about Eldritch horrors is that they're like unfathomable. It's like the scary part is you trying to imagine and come up with just the nastiest, worst, fucking horrible thing you can come up with, right? So as soon as you put a picture to that, as soon as you make it a thing, unless you are just the best of the best in terms of like creature design or whatever, you fail, right? And that's what they've done. And it's just man, and it's just like monster of the week shit, but they're just horrible. The first one was pretty cool, but oh my God, it's just bad and dumb, and there's so many plot holes that you notice because you can't help but notice because everything's going to shit. Oh man, it's just a mess. It's just a mess, and I'm not even mad. You know, sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's fun to watch something just totally unravel. Because it's like, I still don't know exactly where it's going, and yeah, I guess that's fun, so I don't know why I'm complaining. It's fine. If it were a show that I were really invested in, then I'd be upset, right? But because it's a show that like I wasn't in love with, I just thought like, hey, has some cool things, this is fun. So it's just kind of fun that it's all just totally falling apart. Man, what happened?